So I didn't post any movies during the month of July 2015 because I was in the great city of Vancouver, BC. More on that later. While there, I became even more convinced that this video is necessary. Even in a major city like Vancouver, BC, there aren't a lot of drag queens, and the following types aren't extensively, if at all, represented. There might be quite a few people whose performing style fits into one or two categories, but not from another category. This doesn't change the usefulness of this information. After all, the more you know. First of all, I'd like to touch upon a topic where most people have heard the appellation drag queen, RuPaul's Drag Race. If this is how people have heard of drag queens, it deserves some commentary. I've never seen even part of an episode, so I won't comment any further than to say it's one of the most powerful standardizing features in the world of drag. By virtue of who gets favorable comments and who wins each season, there's a powerful voice for what constitutes good and bad drag. A working queen can't be bothered with a contest. These people have a real gimmick for what works, so they shouldn't be troubled by a reality program. People like this can make money, and that's the final say of what's good or bad, what makes money. On the same night, a Phish and a camp drag queen might be the top money makers, but the very next night, in the very same club, it might be club kid and a pageant queen. It all depends on what entertains the audience on a certain night. And what entertains the audience and who they're willing to tip determines what's right and what's wrong. That said, most queens will fall into one category or another based on their own perceptions and what sort of music they like. Surprisingly, your mood and musical tastes can determine what sort of drag you do, because your song choice and the sort of music you listen to can have an unexpectedly huge impact. People who perform to country music are very different aesthetically than people who perform to hard rock. Before I discuss the styles, I'd like to say that you don't have to try to be any type of queen at all. And these are not checklists, but broad categories people tend to fall into. It is entirely possible to fill several categories. In fact, most queens are like this. Now then, folk queens are actually women who dress and perform in an exaggeratedly female manner for reasons of their own. It's more of a filter than an actual type of drag. Okay? Androgyny or genderfuck drag are a type of drag queen also known as an anti-queen. Every queen knows that eventually they're going to be red, and being red is when your birth gender becomes known. Most queens will try to delay this when this will happen, or at least manage when it does. That's part of the game. Androgynous queens, it's a tongue twister, I know, don't even try. They intentionally use a combination of male and female traits because they want to. A tranimal might reveal their chromosomal sex for shock value, but an androgynous queen will do so because they want to. A Phish is the exact opposite, and you can spell this however you want. It's the f sound at the beginning that matters. These are queens who want to look as authentically and gorgeously female as possible. They don't want their actual gender to be even suspected, so their look is very polished and very feminine. Although every queen does to some degree, Phish, more than any other type, exhibit stereotypical drag queen behaviors too. They can be catty, even bitchy and mean. The reasons for doing so are many, but distracting scrutiny from themselves enters into it a lot. Okay, club kids are drag queens who are either from or draw their inspiration from the 1980s or 1990s New York club scene, okay, when the actual club kids were a big deal. They can be fierce, outlandish, and tend to win drag pageants, contests of drag queens, because of the dramatic elements of their performance. Ironically, club kids are the most, or tend to be, the most small c conservative drag queens, because since they feel that this is the way it was done in the 80s or 90s, and this is the way it should always be done. A fashionista is a fashionable to a fault drag queen. Okay? While every drag queen pays a lot of attention to appearance, fashionistas will do it, all drag queens will do it in a different way, and a goth uses lots of black. Fashionistas follow current trends in fashion and employ those trends in their performing appearance. In some ways, fashionistas are like Phish in that they strive for a polished female appearance, but unlike Phish, that's not all there is to the story. A fashionista doesn't care much if her chromosomal sex is revealed, so long as she looks fashionable when it happens. A club queen is like a Phish with the volume turned down. Within the context of the club, as well as going to or from it, they don't want any questions about their actual gender. Within the club or away from their social circumstances, they don't care. They only want to look female in the club, and they are content with being drag queens or transvestites elsewhere. There are a lot of club queens, okay? Goth drag, the kind of drag I do, is you can be dramatic and grasp attention like no other style. You have to say that about goths. They're very dramatic, very attention-getting. Okay, there's a lot of overlap between goths and death metal, black metal, punk, and other forms of extreme artistry. Okay, and there's a lot of black and even more inspiration from dark artists like the Sisters of Mercy and Bauhaus in goth drag. Pageant queens are like faux queens, more of a filter than a type of drag. I've seen drag pageants where you can see goths, Phish, club kids, and more on stage, all competing. Pageant queens are essentially Phish with the volume turned up, way up. Okay? They're very polished, very feminine, and very serious about it all. Winning the contest, even if the contest is with the other queens present to see who looks most authentically female, is all there is to them. Okay? While the other types of drag queen discussed here perform in shows or paying gigs often or regularly, pageant queens tend to devote all of their efforts to drag pageants, which are like beauty contests except all the contestants are drag queens. Okay, camp drag queens are the comics of the drag community, and there's a lot of camp drag queens because as you advance in age, it becomes easier to do camp drag than any other kind of drag. Camp drag will employ satire, ribaldry, and spot-on delivery to inject humor. If elements of clownish behavior enter into things at all, chances are good a camp queen is very likely to do it. Camp queens may or may not have male traits for all to behold, but they'll make the appearance of one a joke, if possible. Trans drag is yet one more kind of filter. A drag can be a way to learn gender transition fast, and trans drag queens do that. By definition, trans drag queens have become gender tradition, and 99.9999% of the time from male to female. They may not transition all the way, but they've taken some steps. Breast enlargement, letting their hair grow, whatever it may be. In performing style, trans drags tend to be like Phish, with the volume turned down even more than club queens, for example. A trans drag queen knows that they're going to not to pull it off right away, but they try anyway. Fluid or fluidity is yet one more filter and not one people consciously try to do. Most drag queens perform in several styles as the mood strikes them, and that change of style is gender fluidity or drag fluidity. The terms are interchangeable. Tranimals or terrorist drag queens play with the differences in presentation of the genders and how they represent, often purposely displaying some aspect of one gender or the other, such as tucking or binding poorly for shock value. They'll use surrealism and aspects of le grand guignol to purposely get the audience thinking. Skag drag, which is a queen that intentionally displays some male trait like a beard or something else, and the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence belong in this category. Tranimals care less for the audience being entertained than they do for provoking and intellectually arousing the audience. That's a tranimal. Finally, we have active vessels. Active vessels are not a category and not a type of drag, but a kind of group. The Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence can be placed here, especially since the sisters, like many active vessels, raise money for other causes. All members of an active vessel have something in common, usually part of their performing gimmick, like the skag drag, which all the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence employ. They're kind of hairy. Drag families are typical of a type of active vessel. Okay, and the thing they have in common will be their name. The Surreals, for example. There are as many types of drag as there are drag performers, and as many definitions. I myself can occupy no fewer than 4 categories, perhaps more, and rigidly fitting into a single category is what is rare. These categories in the true tranimal tradition are to get you thinking.